James O'Connor, how are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Excited to get stuck into a convo with you. It's been planning it for a little bit.
Mate, this is exciting because I'm 27 going on 28. And I remember the first time I ever come across you, you were just absolutely ripping and tearing for the Wallabies on the rugby field. And I wasn't a rugby kid growing up. I've been a bit of a leaguey my whole life and passionate Chooks fan. Got a couple of mates who play in the NRL now, so I watch a couple of games of league a week. But I've always been a fan of international rugby, and
Mm.
that's one thing that I've always been envious of as an NRL fan or as a league fan is that our international game just lacks a little bit compared to the international spectacle that you get with rugby and I guess the quality of competition you have across the globe
Yeah,
in the game of rugby is pretty exciting. Mate, you were a young whippersnapper when you started, like 17, was it? 18 when you debuted?
17 for Super Rugby and 18 with the Wallabies. But yeah, that was one of the main draw cards for me because I played mostly league growing up.
Hmm.
Then went to a private school in grade 11. Started playing union. But yeah, that was a big calling for me. Was like I could see the Wallabies on this world stage, and I've got heritage in New Zealand, South Africa, over in Europe as well. So yeah, it was just almost that was a deep calling to possibly go in that direction like the one I did.
So who did you support growing up being a leaguey?
St George and the Bronx always. So my junior coach was John Dowling, St George legend. So every now and again we'd get some of the players down there. But I actually signed with Parramatta Eels when I was 13. Up until I left high school, I was with the Eels. Yeah, so
Yeah, wow.
plan was to go there after high school, but I had to change of heart and wanted to give Union a try first, and yeah, the rest I guess is history.
So where'd you grow up?
Grew up so born on the Gold Coast, moved to New Zealand when I was five, in Te Atatu in West Auckland. Lived there for 5.5 years, and came back when I was 11, back to the Gold Coast. Grew up on the Gold Coast, so we've still got like my family doesn't all live there anymore, but we still have like our place down there, etc. And then moved. So I was Gold Coast boy, and then moved up to Brisbane when I was 15, and then finished high school 17. Moved straight across to Perth to begin the journey with the Western Force.
Do you know Nathan Charles?
I do know Nathan Charles. Yeah.
Yeah. I I've had the pleasure of meeting him once or twice because, like myself, he has cystic fibrosis, and we've sort of it's weird with CF. You can't actually meet someone like in close proximity because there's a really high risk of cross infection,
Oh,
which is
really?
like So it's really weird. It's like the one condition in the world where you can't really connect with a community face to face to share I guess to share war stories and share advice.
Well, I remember his story. Like he wasn't meant to be playing rugby.
No,
Like
not at all, man.
yeah. And to
No,
do what he's done, he was a very impressive player, very athletic. But yeah, his story is pretty incredible.
yeah,
Even still got his feelers in rugby now. He was still running the cutter over in Perth last time I spoke to him. But I think he's come back to Sydney now.
yeah. He's doing something at I think it's UNSW, like sort of head of sport or rugby or something like that. He's basically putting the brain to use these days. Got a bigger
Yeah.
brain than me, and really nice lad. And hearing him speak, I think it was like mid last year, we got together for this. It was kind of like I think they called it the rugby long lunch. They had him and one or two other Wallabies lads come in and speak. And mate, it's going to kill me. The great rugby commentator he's written a couple books. Oh, what's his name?
Oh, I don't know, man. You
I
got
can't think of him. He emceed the event. It was fantastic. There were some great stories getting around, and just loved hearing his stories. But the Western Force is quite an unusual situation over there because you're stuck in the land of, I guess, AFL fans.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's very different to everywhere else in Australia, where it's mostly league and a little bit of rugby, and so it's ultimately a different kind of dynamic to get your debut in. But what's that environment like to step into a place where you're maybe not in the spotlight so much, but you eventually found the spotlight?
Yeah.
How was that as a beginning?
I loved it. Like it was very different crowds. I feel like the AFL like community embraced us as well because we were just one team. There was two of them. Like Perth people are very passionate for like their local sport, so we were still getting like great crowds. We had good members. We had a lot of sponsors. When I first went over, the game was thriving. It was very new, and there was a big buzz about it. But yeah, it did. Coming from like Brisbane, I know that's not like the most active and busy city compared to, I guess, the two others down south of us. But it was still a lot more, I guess, active than Perth. So coming to Perth, I really enjoyed because it was just like such a pure life of rugby, beach, hanging out with the guys. We had our own little scooter gang. We all eventually moved into one big house. There was 5 of us. All took part in cooking and cleaning and playing rugby away. Whoever lost had to buy dinner, and it was quite a pure life. How it started. Obviously, we were still like going out and drinking and doing the things that young men do. But I found Perth like it's a very light place. It's all, I guess, tailored around living healthily and yeah, a slower pace.
So
Anywhere near the ocean is always going to be cleansing.
bloody oath, I agree with that. Would you describe yourself as a pretty rebellious character as a young man, like just as you're beginning your career, or were you pretty placid by nature?
I've always been one to experience life, and I do push the boundaries in terms of like where's the line. I won't cross it, but I'll tinker on it. And why is that line there? Who made that line? Why do I have to live the way that this person said? Like I've always been quite inquisitive. I think my probably downfalling was I would take things as a young man, like I'd take things so personally. So like we were bantering, you will never beat me at bantering. Like I could not lose. I was so competitive. But then like I've learned so much obviously along the way, different modalities from human design to gene keys to even astrology. Like I've learned deeply what I've come here to do and what my purposes are, etc. And that was just part of my lessons. And then so yeah, that's where I sort of got into trouble. Was like people would be like, oh, he's doing this, and I'm like, oh, I haven't even touched on that. Like I could do so much more than that. So it was almost like a challenge, and then at the same time, it was, I guess, me just. It's like I guess I had like that wound of like that, not abandonment, but like I can feel when someone is uncomfortable around me, and then
Mm.
that would annoy me. I'm like, why? Like, why do you have this feeling about me? Like, what have I done to you?
Where do you think that comes from?
What that feeling,
Yeah.
or where that how I can feel what other people. I think it's just the way I've been, my genetic makeup. Whatever I guess people have so many different beliefs around the world. So like I was talking about modalities, like I know from human design, I'm a generator, so I've got a very open aura. I know one of my gene keys is provocation is my main one. So when people come into my energy, they'll feel it. Either most of the time, it's big and joyful and playful, but when it's not comfortable to be around. Even for me to be in my own energy, it's I want to get out of it.
See, it's interesting. I've never really heard anyone speak about this. What do you call it? Human modalities.
So I guess modalities for me is like you got your I Ching, you've got astrology, you've got like there's so many the Kabbalah, like so many different I guess Western and Eastern mysticism, and I guess but there's I guess a modality for me is I don't know if you've heard about human design. There's another one called gene keys.
No, I haven't really. This is new to me, but this is
It's
exciting.
all scientific based, but it's also to do with I guess the planetary alignments and I guess what it tells you is I guess what you've come here to do and how you have you heard about the enneagram?
Nah, man, you're hitting me with some new stuff here. This is good.
Oh yeah, man, have a play. Like once I started playing with some of these things, and it just resonated so deeply with me. And each of them resonated. I'm like, how like I don't understand how this can be telling me so much about myself that no one knows, but I know it, and it resonates so deeply. I'm like, how has this world been so perfectly created that these things can tell me something exactly based on me, based on the time I was born or where I was born, and it blew my mind. So I started playing with it, like going down those routes of just exploring, and not all of it resonates, but a lot of it I've found over the years has given me some deep wisdom and some things that I've been able to incorporate into my life that has made it a lot better.
Isn't it interesting that as we get older, you start to search for answers to explain and sort of start to understand yourself a little bit. And I think like it's really interesting. I don't know if you've heard of Ben Crow.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, just I love Ben Crow's stuff, and he talks about these three big questions that we all have to answer in life. The first one of which is like, who am I?
yeah,
And I just think a lot of people try to skip that and go to what do I want?
yeah.
Like the
Well, it's
three
easier,
questions.
right? Who
Well,
that's sitting on your own pondering time. It's the hardest thing. Like look at society now. No one can be bored anymore. Everyone's always picking up their phone. You go to a cafe, Like it's very rare that you'll see someone just sitting there and pondering life, and especially people our age, let alone younger. I went to a Blink 182 concert the other night with my missus, and everyone just was on their phone the whole time. I'm like, everyone who was under 35, I'd say, was just on their phone the whole time. Everyone over that was like embracing the moment and dancing and singing. And I was like, that to me is like there's nothing wrong with it. It's just like we're so caught in gotta get that dopamine hit, gotta like entertain my mind, gotta entertain the master. My mind's my master. Whereas to know who I am, that takes a lot of just stillness, quiet, space, reflection. It's hard work when you first begin, but then you start to really love it. But it takes practice.
I feel like you'd really like a guy by the name of Boyd Vardy. Boyd Vardy is a lion tracker from South Africa.
A line striker?
And yeah, and he's done an incredible job of.
Wait, he's not that guy with blonde shaved head.
No, I know who you're thinking of, the guy who's cuddling lions and stuff. I don't, boy.
He came up this morning on my feed.
Yeah, his stuff regularly pops up on my feed too. But Boyd Vardy is. I once heard him on Aubrey Marcus's podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's arguably top 3 podcasts I've ever listened to. I regularly listen to it at the beginning of every new year.
Okay.
Just to get my head in the right space for, I think.
You'll have to send me that one.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to it. I bloody love it, man.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. And he speaks about lion tracking as, this lost art that, that they're refining. He's got this, I guess you'd call it this reserve called Londolozi. And he takes people out on these experiences and these safaris where they just track the lions for people to look at. And, it's all that conservation. He's incredibly good-natured guy. But one of the things I love is his ability to translate lion tracking into a guide for tracking your own path in life.
Yeah, wow.
And he speaks beautifully about it. And one of the things that really resonated with me at the time that I first heard this podcast was, the path of not there or not here is incredibly insightful, because the next move is just take another step in a different direction, whether it's the right one or not. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think it takes time. And there's a lot of people who, because of Instagram and social media, have this preconceived idea that everyone has themselves figured out already, and that it's just the final destination as opposed to this ever-evolving thing. And I think it's really important to remember that it's ever changing. We're constantly evolving as humans, and it's definitely a process where you have to become comfortable with being a little bit lost sometimes. And and I get the sense that you allude to that a little bit there in what you were saying before.
Yeah, well, I have this conversation again with my wife all the time. It's like, it all depends, like where, like what are you praising? Like what does success look like for you? Like, and I feel like it happens to me all the time. I can get lost in the illusion of this physical world of trying to achieve, playing for the Wallabies, playing for the Reds, winning a title, getting the next contract, ticking along my studies, getting my MBA, doing my coaching degrees. Like you can get so caught up in that physical that you forget, like, oh, well, for me anyway, all that is just like the illusion. It's great to be able to express yourself in that way, but really the journey is just me. It's me is experiencing them. And so like when you're always focused on like doing, you're never actually being. I think that's been a key in my development. And again, if you don't learn the lesson, just keeps repeating, but you learn it at a deeper level. But that's one thing I keep coming back to is like presence is so powerful, so powerful.
It's so interesting because you're in a profession where that at times can almost be discouraged because you're in a performance profession, right? So, it's very much you're judged by how you achieve as opposed to who you are. And I find it quite interesting. One of the things I really wanted to ask you today is at what point in your career, and I'm not by any means suggesting you've mastered it because I don't think anyone ever does, but at what point in your career did you learn to remove yourself from the end result and be able to be happy with who you are as a human being, regardless of how rugby was going?
So the first time I experienced like being able to remove myself was probably 2011 World Cup. After that World Cup, I had like not deep depression compared to what I have had, but a depression of like, wait, this is it? Like I've done everything, and like now I have to wait 4 years for another spectacle like this. Like what's life going to be like? And that started me on the track of like the process and okay, reflecting, what do I actually enjoy about that World Cup? What was like the point of me going through this? Like, it's all done. Like, no one cares about it. Like, this is my whole life I've put into this one moment, and now everyone's just moved on.
Mm.
Like, how do I move on with it? So that was probably the first one. But again, it grows all the time. Like, I thought 4 years ago I was at that point, but I've been able to realize, well, I was so far from it, which is great. Like, I see that as like, what a pleasure. Like, that I can continue to like grow and learn, I guess, deeper about myself. Um, but yeah, like the balancing was, yeah, maybe in the UK was when I first could separate sort of James O'Connor from the rugby player. And like, rugby player, not only, this is interesting, like, I'm a performance sport, but the way I see me playing rugby, it's not just a game. I see it as like my purpose as well. Like, I was put here on this realm or this earth or whatever it is to shine a light on something. And I believe that I've been given, even my awkward shaped body and how my mind works is very specific to sport and rugby. So for me, like, playing my best footy, I feel like that is my gift to be able to share. So then to separate that from when things weren't going my way, or I wasn't interacting as well with a coach, or I didn't agree with the game plan, or I've had resistance in different areas, watching how I've dealt with that over the years has been really, really informative. I've probably learnt more these last 4 years off the field, and how I had responded to different coaches and different pressures, and how I'd maybe not have dealt with them as well as I thought of I would have in that moment, from the knowledge
Mm.
I hold now and where I am in my life, by just seeing how, yeah, how there's so many different angles to the game.
How important do you think it is, like your move overseas? I look at that from an outsider's perspective at a time in which you were very much making headlines, probably not for reasons you always wanted to, but your move overseas to another part of the world in which the media tends to be less scrutinizing around kind of who you are as a human being. In Australia, we idolize our sports stars, but we also like to tear them down in the media, and it's almost this game of to and fro. But I think about that move overseas, and you're almost like removing yourself from the noise. How
Well,
important
look
is?
at me, but like, they want, especially in France, like even in the UK, like there's a culture of like drinking, but it's, you go out for one pint after training, or you have two. And like, I had to learn how to do that. But even in France, like, I always wanted to be doing stuff. Like, when I was younger, I found it very difficult to not sit still, but to sit with my thoughts, because I knew how I was so out of alignment, and I was frustrated at the man I'd become and the actions I was living. And I was, yeah, a man of many conflicts. But to move to France, it was very social. Like, whereas in Australia, I go out for a glass of wine with
Mm,
my brothers, or we have a whiskey or whatever it is. Oh, James O'Connor was here drinking, blah blah. He's not doing the right thing. I'm like, what the fuck do you know about what the right thing for me is?
yeah.
It turns out I wasn't doing the right thing for me, but who are you to tell me what's right for me? Whereas now, if I did that, it is the right thing, because I know where I'm at in my body and my mind. But in
Mm,
France, it was so like social. There was always long lunches. It was always, you'd go down to the water and have a couple rosés, and you'd go on the paddle boards, go fishing. There was the community came together so much. So they loved how I was, because I'm quite a people person. When I'm on and I feel that I'm interacting, I'm trying to learn French, I'm speaking French with the locals. So they applauded who I was, and that's the first time I felt like seen and recognized, that they didn't just like me because I could play rugby well. It was because like I became friends with these people.
yeah, I love that.
I could barely communicate with at the start, but then eventually, like, yeah. So I built a lot of rapport in that way, and then that also taught me as well, like, how to not chase the extremities as often.
It's interesting that, we often frown upon people who make mistakes in life like we're all perfect. And, the media does a big job of really highlighting the mistakes and the downfalls of people and trying to challenge their character. But there's something that I think about a lot. And I'm a pretty, so I'm a pretty old soul, James. Like I don't, I've had liver disease from the age of 9, so I don't drink.
Yeah,
And mate, I'm pretty fucking rooted by 8:30 most nights. I'm in bed pretty early, with the missus having a cup of peppermint tea. I'm up
I
pretty
do
early. Like,
too.
mate, it's cracker every night before bed. I'm pretty much an 80-year-old man trapped in a 27-year-old man's body. But so I haven't made too many major mistakes in my life, but I've definitely lost my way at times. And there's a story that I love. I'm a big fan of Guy Ritchie, the director, right?
Yeah,
And I remember hearing him tell this story on Rogan. And if my missus can hear me telling this from the bedroom should be rolling her eyes because I've told her about this theory, this idea 10 times now, and she's sick of hearing it. But it's the story of the prodigal son, right? Which is a religious story. I don't know if you've heard the story, if you know of it.
Story of Joseph.
Um,
Egypt into Egypt, prodigal son. No, not that one.
Maybe, mate. I'm not as well versed in the Bible as maybe I should be for telling this story, but I'm going to tell it from Guy Ritchie's perspective.
Go on.
So he tells the story of the prodigal son. Essentially, it's a story of this, this father and his two sons. There's the older son, the younger son, and they work on the farm. And the older son is incredibly loyal to his father. Like if the father asks something of him, he does it. He wants to be there by his dad's side. He knows it's the right thing to do, and so he remains there on the farm and does his job and plays his part in the family. But the younger brother, who's restless, there's something, a fire in his belly telling him to go out into the world and experience something new. So he leaves the father and he goes out into the world, and he makes all these mistakes and these wrong decisions. And as Guy Ritchie says, he finds himself snorting coke off strippers' tits and making all these bad decisions. And ultimately, he loses everything that he has and finds himself with the job of, feeding the pigs. And ultimately, off the back of that, he can't even afford to feed himself. And without any form of communication, the father has this knowing that the youngest son is lost. And so he sacrifices the fatty calf, goes out to feed the son and bring him home. And the older brother is like so frustrated by that because I've stayed by your side, I've been so loyal to you. And he's gone out and made all these mistakes and wrong decisions and done ultimately what he knew was wrong. And then you sacrifice the fatty calf for him to bring him home. And the moral of the story is that, you are the father and the eldest son is your intellect, the part of you that tells you what you should do. And, it's the rule abider, and it stays on the straight and narrow and it doesn't make mistakes. But the youngest son is that part of you that almost has to go and prostitute yourself to the world, make mistakes to come back and find yourself in the end. And I think there's no world or reality in which you find yourself without fucking up a couple of times.
Oh, 100%. Isn't that that's the beauty of it? Going out and exploring. Like you could look at the older brother as well and be like, well, what is his intention? Why is he hanging around his dad? Is it because out of fear? Is it out of love? Is it out of him wanting to be patted on the head? You're a good boy. And again, like the youngest son, why did he go exploring? Like you're saying, that's his his gut. It's telling him to go out and learn about the world. So it's like there's no right or wrong with any of it. I think that's quite beautiful, especially for again, this is another modality. Like they talk about your Saturn return at the age of 30 for men, around 29, 30. So when we're in our especially our teens and our 20s, our whole role is to go out there and explore and make mistakes and learn from your own mistakes. Especially when you have a profile like mine. Then you get to 30, and for me, it was like literally on my 30th birthday on the dot. It was pretty much like, fuck, I'm so done with doing all that. What a waste of energy. It's tiring. It doesn't actually fulfill me at all. Going out, I get nothing from it. I found that out quite a few years earlier, but I never really said, no, I don't want to drink anymore. No, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to do that. It was only ever for a period of time to be able to get my body in alignment and just to see what it was like to live that way. But literally on the dot, pretty much at the age of 30, it was like, I'd gone out and experienced these things, some beautiful, amazing things and some terrible things. And now that's almost like in a portfolio or a backpack of knowledge that I brought to where I am in this next part of my life where I know exactly what I like. I know what's good for me. It's not even like I don't even have to think about the logic behind it of do I wake up and do I eat this or is that a good food for me or is this good training? Like I can just feel it. So it's like I'm being governed by my gut now, but it's almost married to that. It's like the younger brother and the older brother have come together as one and put both of their skill sets together. I think that's such a beautiful place to get when you're a young man growing and you get to that point.
Yeah, bloody oath. And I think, your experiences, in a way, if you think of yourself almost as a lollipop that gets put in the pocket to go on the journey from here to there, once you pull it out of the pocket and you have a look at it, it's pretty much picked up a little bit of everything on it that you've, stashed along the way and all the experiences. And ultimately, I see you sitting here now and you've had mate, one of the things that I was really keen to talk to you about today is just the experiences and the little lessons you learn in all of the different environments you've been in. Because I look at your life and I think, man, what a fascinating journey. You've lived in the UK, you've lived in France, you spent your time all over the shop here in Oz. Like you've had quite a unique experience and a unique journey, or let's call it quest, because it's still unfolding.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, what are some of the lessons you've learned from those experiences at different rugby clubs over the year? If you want to take us on like a little bit of a tour
Okay.
around your journey.
All right. So Western Force, what did I learn? I learned how to run a team for the first time. So I came in, I was a young guy, I was just fresh faced. I just wanted to learn from everyone. And then maybe the four key backs who were running the team, they all left. So at the age of maybe 20, I was running a back line. So it threw me into the deep end. It was like sink or swim. And that was the biggest lesson I got from that was backing myself. One, because I was already playing like at quite a high level, but then to be able to take on like that leadership at quite a young age, that was very instilling in me. I think Rebels for me was more conflict, internal conflicts of like the person I'd become. Rugby wasn't quite fulfilling me. I had like there was like a bit of a split between the playing group. Like we weren't winning. We had some good players on paper, but it was a bit of a shit show, to be fair. And I was just so conflicted and frustrated internally. So I started like seeking pleasure outside of rugby. Not that I hadn't done that in Perth or my whole life, because I'd always explored, I'd always pushed boundaries, but it became like a different intention for it. It wasn't like purity of like going out and hanging out. It was like, I'm gonna go do some damage tonight. It was like
Can I ask you a question on that quickly before you leave that? Was there a point in that moment there where you're not finding the pleasure, the fulfillment in rugby like you used to, that you considered leaving the game altogether?
that didn't happen until I moved to France.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't let me make you skip
Yeah.
ahead.
You know, I
Do.
was so yeah. I nearly left union. I was pretty close to leaving rugby union, and going to league um, at that stage because I was frustrated. Like I didn't what I could do on the field and what I saw on the field, I couldn't explain. I hadn't sat with myself long enough to be able to put it into logic so I could explain it to the coach or explain it to these players. So as my own worst enemy, I'd just get frustrated. I'm like, fuck, can't you see? Like, look, it's so obvious to me, like what we should be doing. But no one could see that game the way like I saw it. So it took me time to be able to actually, okay, why did I do that action? Go back over the footage. Oh, because he tilted like that. He was there and he moved there. Okay. So that's now I have a pattern. I have a movement pattern. I can teach that. I can put that in a structure. But that took me a little bit longer. But we'll get to that later. So yeah, left Melbourne, went to London Irish. London Irish for me was just purely to get out of the fishbowl and to just live like a normal person. Because at that time as well, like social media just blowing up as well. Like we were under scrutiny, like me and a couple of my close friends who we were playing with, and we all played different sports, and it was just very hard to go anywhere at that time and not have something said about you.
Who was that crew?
Oh man, there's heaps of us. Hey, there's a few of us, a few AFL boys, a few leagueies, quite a few rugby players. But we were all living in different parts of Australia at times as well. We'd always connect up, we'd always meet up and hang out. It became like, there was a lot of trust going through that group. We shared a lot. But yeah, then I got sort of to London where it was like no one cared about an Australian rugby player. It was beautiful for me. Like it's still, my name carried enough weight still to get me into clubs and whatnot, but it didn't. No one else cared once you were in there. So it was it was a very like it was a dark time in my life, but also like I learned so much about me and what I didn't want to do anymore because I really took it really to the extreme in London where like partying and going out and like I wasn't looking after my body at all. I was still playing good enough footy, but like we were sort of mid bottom of the table, and I was playing fullback, so I could do like 3 or 4 good things a game, and everyone would still be like, "Oh fuck, he's still got it." But meanwhile, I wasn't actually anywhere near the player I was a couple of years before that because my body was broken.
Can I ask you a quick question on that? So you said that when you got to London, because nobody really knew who you are, there was something beautiful for you about that. But I wonder, is that a comment you can make in hindsight now looking back? Or Did you genuinely feel that? Because I'd almost think that for a lot of athletes, and people talk about ego like it's a bad thing all the time. I think there's a good and a bad to ego. There's the good in which it motivates you to push yourself and to get the best out of yourself because you have some sort of you place some sort of importance on the way that you show up in the world and how you perform, which is great if you're an athlete or if you're an athlete in any sense, whether it be in business or sport. But there's also the part of the ego which, when nobody gives a fuck about you and you've experienced everyone giving a fuck about you,
Yeah.
you're like, this is different. How did it feel for your ego?
Back then, no, I'm fine. I've had that feeling that you're talking about later on
Mm,
in life, especially like the last 2 years. Um, and just watching my mind go to that place has been quite interesting. But yeah, in that time, my ego was still getting tickled enough because I was hanging out with actors and like
okay.
people who were like, I was hanging out with a good crew over there. Yeah, there was all people on reality TV shows. Like there was a lot of, so even though like my name wasn't like, it was just beautiful. It was good for me because I could do whatever the fuck I wanted, and that was what I needed for myself in that time. Was it detrimental? Yes. Was it like damaging? It was. But if I didn't go through that, like maybe I would be still have an urge in me to want to go do that. I rarely got that all out when I was in London. I got a part of me to really experience it to the furthest extreme and then be like, all right, I've done that now. It wasn't that great. Like, yeah, there was some good moments, but actually I don't really enjoy that. So now let's go in a different direction. Again, let's go explore. Um, so that was London. France for me was bittersweet as well. It was tough for me because it was very hard to crack. I'd always been, since I'd been at the Force and taken over that Western Force backline, sort of running the team, I'd always been like the big fish in the team. And I went to this Toulon team and I could barely make the starting lineup. One week I'd play 12, the next wing, the next 15. It was like there was 3 international teams in that one squad. So it was incredible, like to learn from these guys, and I learned a lot off the field as well, just hanging around men. And these were men I respected because they, at that time, I didn't realize that they had done great things in the game, but they were also family men. But they also had a streak to them. Like I always say, like some of the greatest athletes always had that really competitive streak where when they go, they fucking go, like they
Mm.
zone in, and all of these guys had it. They were very well balanced, but when they went, like if we were doing the social or I loved the fact that they would go hard and anything they did with intention. So that's what I enjoyed about France, and I enjoyed as well the social element of it. I enjoyed learning about French. I bought like a little French car, which was this little green toy convertible looking thing that I'd cruise around in and jumping in the water all the time. It was a very light time of my life, but at the same moment, I was still I'd come out of like my dark part, and I was like finding, I guess, the light and learning about myself in a deeper way. But I had addictions to alcohol and drugs, and which I was battling. I knew it wasn't good for me anymore, and I
Mm.
was trying to get out of the cycle of it, but I was finding it hard to do it on my own. So
Can
that
I ask you a question about that? Like, when you're in the heat of the battle with addictions, was there ever a point in which you blamed the other things in your life for those addictions? Because I think anyone who's addicted to something, there's something deeper that they're trying to solve, a problem they're trying to mask, something they're trying to forget about, something they're trying to get away from. Like, were you in full ownership the whole time of the
I,
fact that this was a problem you had to face?
I knew it was. I didn't admit to anyone it was a problem, but I knew in myself was a problem. Like me
Mm,
and my wife, like we knew it was a problem. She was very good with it. Such a fine line with someone. Like if you push them too far, they'll run.
mm.
If you don't hold them accountable enough, they'll fucking walk all over you. But yeah, for me, it was mine was I just didn't want to feel so deeply. Again, I still was learning how to communicate. I was still learning how to sit with my own feelings. This was all new to me, but it was like a floodgate opened up, and I could see how I destroyed my world. What I saw was the greatest mistake of my life was, fuck, I've ruined my whole career. I've ruined everything. And then for me to feel all that, and then feel all the pain I'd caused some other people as well when I was in my rampaging moments, that was very hard for me to feel. As well, I feel as well, I was quite energetically depleted too, just from, again, I was always out. I was down. As much as it was great to go down and have a rosé or mint dinner out or go exploring here. Like I explored so much. I'd travel all over France every weekend. We would maybe fly to Morocco. We'd go, like, I was doing so much, but I couldn't keep up. And the way for me to keep up was substances. So it
Mm.
was such a, like, fucking catch 22 where I'd get tired. So I'd take something to help me party that night. But then I'd be tired the next day and I have to train. So then I have to get up for training. So I'm smashing like pre workout, smashing this, a couple of anti inflammatories. Like, it was just such a vicious cycle. Again, like I told you, then I got to that age of 30 and I was like, oh, fuck, done with all that. That was cool to experience.
Mm.
But like, it just, for me, it was just almost suddenly, yeah, I switched it off.
It's so interesting. You said that you're just trying not to feel deeply. And I think that, we spoke about it really early on, that when you're trying to figure out that the answer to that first question, like, who am I?
Mm.
The pain of not knowing, sometimes you want to stop feeling. Like, I'm a pretty, anyone who knows me, James, I'm a pretty emotional cat. You know what I mean? Like, you'll catch me crying over a movie.
What are you? Yeah, what are you? Cancer, Pisces.
I'm an Aries.
You're an Aries. Shit. Okay.
Yeah. Mate, I'm an emotional cat. And I think I'm an emotional cat because, like, I love my people dearly. And I feel so deeply because life means so much to me. Like, and I at this point in my life,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know who I am and I know what means something to me in the world. So when I love that I feel deeply. Like, I think that's one of my greatest assets. But when you're trying to figure out who you are and life is testing you, sometimes you'll wish you didn't feel so deeply. So I wonder, has that like switched for you now where you're really comfortable with feeling emotions and experiences more deeply as a human?
What's the beauty of life? I
Mm,
guess everything you've been through at such a young age, that's why it's so magical to you. You're so pro life because you've seen how it can be taken away so easily, so quickly. I actually had on my fridge feel for a long time.
mm,
That was when I went on my first like retreat, and I went on I met a shaman and went delved down that route back in like 2017, 18. Met a guy, yeah, met him in Turkey, blah blah. What I got from that whole week, 2 week experience of like spending time with this guy and with these groups of people and communicating was I was taking it. So I was, I guess, numbing myself or drinking or doing whatever it was, almost to just block that bottom layer. So then I could only, it wasn't that I didn't want to feel, it's like I only wanted to feel like nice and positive. And then when I felt here, I could explore the world and ask questions and sit with myself. Like my body wasn't agitated. I'd taken something to make my body and my mind be here. And then when I asked the who am I questions, it was really pleasant to like, I could still see the bullshit I was creating, but I wasn't attached to it because it was almost like I was out of my body. So then
mm,
I could start exploring. I started reading. I started doing research. I'd watch YouTube clips for 4 hours at night to 2 a.m. I was like down the rabbit hole of conspiracies of what's going on in the world. Like, so like that was, so again, it wasn't the best. Like I wouldn't recommend it to someone to do it that way. But for me, it's crazy that this period of my life where I was still getting off substances, but just taking them a little bit actually helped me delve deeper, which is not something I like
mm,
to say because it's not the answer. But for me, it took a long time. I prolonged it because of that, and then inside that became another fucking ego illusion where no, you need to take that because that helps you get to hair or whatever it is. So that's a whole other story. But for me, it wasn't about not feeling. It was like I only wanted to feel the good stuff. So then after I
mm,
had sat with myself, explored, and learned a lot more about myself, it was like no. I wrote on my fridge, feel everything. So I had a big piece of paper,
yeah,
feel everything. Every morning I'd walk past it, feel everything. And that just reminded me, like, if you don't feel the bad, you're good. Like, it's almost like two different, yeah, like the end of two different extremes. If you never feel the bad, your good can't be all the way over here. It's just
mm,
neutral. There's a beauty in being neutral, but like that's how great life is you want to have the extremities. You want to love deeply. You want to feel such sorrow. You want to feel pride. You want to feel like exhilaration when you've won a premiership. If you're not feeling one thing, you can't feel the other. It's like hot and cold on a tap, like temperatures,
mm.
trying to control that.
My good mate Dill Buckley, as he says, have some range.
Yeah.
And I like that, and I think about that a lot in my own life. So you're at this point in France, around 30 at the time.
Yeah,
What's the
around
next step?
about 27.
27.
Yeah. Next step, I get in trouble for doing something quite not out of character, but like just stupid. Like we had a big night. Me and a friend got arrested for, well, he bought cocaine, and I was with him, and it's quite a big deal over there. Like, so yeah, don't do that over there.
Mm.
So yeah, we were put in lockup, and I think because there was so many, because the people knew that it was me and him in there, so many media cameras, and it became such a big story that the jailers and stuff were like, who the fuck are these guys? Are they like gangsters or something? Like we both look pretty weird. I've got like blonde hair, and he's about 7 foot. So we would have looked like strange cats. But yeah, we were in there, spent a couple nights in there, and that was sort of one of my rock bottoms where I was like, okay, I'm done with that life. Like I really need to figure this out. And for me to figure it out was I had to leave France. I had to go somewhere where I could just focus on myself and rugby, and that for me was Sale Sharks up north of England. Was really where I did a lot of the deep work, and really began sticking to what I would say. Started sticking to my word of who I was and what I was doing, and it wasn't so like repeating cycles. I was just building slowly.
Tell me, like, it sounds like for a huge portion of those really important years of your life, your now wife has been there
Yeah,
by your side. How do you feel about looking back on all of that? And like, talk to me about your relationship with her. And obviously, only share what you want to share. But I just think I'm so blessed to have the most amazing woman in my life that I'm excited to marry, put a ring on her finger, make some babies with her very soon. And so, very blessed to have that in my world. And I often think that, for all of we've only been together for 16 months, but we've lived together from 2 weeks into our
yeah,
relationship.
okay.
So we threw ourselves in the deep end, and I love it a bit. But I look back on last year, and mate, I put her through some challenging months just because I was chasing this dream that just always felt like it was a little bit too far away from me
Yeah,
to grab a hold of. And, it put us under such financial stress, and it made life really challenging for a portion of time. And it never challenged our relationship, never had a drift in the love, never had a drift in connection, but it just made our physical day to day really hard and our mental day to day. And I think a lot of the time, fuck, how didn't she stop believing in me? Because she
mm.
always believed in me. She always backed me 100%. And I wonder if you ask yourself a similar question.
Many times, man. Fuck, like I've known my wife Bridget since I met her when I was 16. She was 15, so we've known each other like more than half our lives. We've been together on our journey. Like hasn't always been, well, at all. It hasn't always been rosy. Haven't always been together. There's been separations. There's been blocks. I've lived here. She's lived there. But she's been the one constant person in my life who's always like turned up for me. And yeah, man, her belief. There was times where I was like, "Fuck, I don't deserve this at all." But she kept me alive at times.
It's pretty special, isn't it?
Mm. It is,
Man,
bro.
wow. It's that's crazy. 16 years.
Yeah,
16 years.
no, see, what is it now? So yeah, that'd be 17 years. No, no.
Far out. You must look back now and, being in the position you're in, and tell me before you got a beautiful little property where you escape and you live life together. You must look back and go, man, how good's this? How good's this
Yeah.
to be here right now?
Well, it's even just, again, it's beautiful that we've been so many different people. So it's not like we were just the same people this whole time. Like there's been versions of her that she's had her issues and then she's evolved. And I think the one key thing is we've helped each other evolve consistently, or we've kept each other accountable. She kept me accountable in many ways and I kept her. I think the beauty is as well, like a lot of people can tend to have like maybe a fight or things aren't going well with their partner and they just break up and then they find someone new and hey, I'm evolving in this way and now she won't come here with me, so I'll break up, then I'll start fresh with someone and there won't be the same issues. And so like for us, I don't know whether it was just meant to be, but we've always just chosen each other. Like there's been so many big blows. I've made many mistakes,
Mm.
many things that you wouldn't think someone could come back from, but because we're just so brutally honest with each other, and there's such a deep love there, like a very deep love. You can grow through anything, especially if you can continue to have that trust. And that's one thing, man, with our conversations, as you can imagine. I was quite a loose unit when I was younger, so you can imagine what I was up to.
Mm.
But like, that's what I mean, we've healed everything, we've spoken through, and even now we still have our issues of directions we want to go. Like I've been quite caught in like a physical reality for the last couple of months. It only took me like last sort of 2 weeks to realize that, hang on, just slow down a bit, like just come back, slow down a little bit, which then puts pressure on her in the relationship, because if I'm giving my energy to everyone else, I'm giving to the team because I want us to win, I'm giving in this way, I'm giving in that way, I come home and I'm a shell of a person, or my nervous system switched over and I'm depleted. So then what version is she getting of me?
Mm.
So there's compromises everywhere. But at the end of the day, like for me, it comes back to like who was my tribe, and my tribe is very small, and then it grows out, it grows out, it grows out. But as long as I'm feeding myself and my initial tribe, they're the main people in my world who matter to me, then I know I'm going to be looked after, I'm going to be supported, because I have trust.
It's so interesting you say this. One of the biggest challenges for me the last couple of years is from about 2020 onwards. One of the things that I've never struggled with is having good mates around me and good mates in my life. I feel very blessed to say that, because not everyone can, right? And, I've always seemed to attract just really amazing people who are great human beings, super supportive, would stick by you through thick and thin. But I started to become very social in 2020, so like every morning I was at a run club, I was having 3 coffees a day. If these people are going out to dinner, I'm going with them. If they're going for a walk, I'm going with them. And I was always so outwardly social. And I remember my old man used to always say to me, mate, sometimes you just need to fucking slow down. You're always having a million coffee catch ups, you're with 1,000 people, and then you behind the mic talking to someone, just like preserve your energy. And I used to think, nah, I feed off this. And then when I met Soph, I immediately recognized, because I knew straight away she was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And I immediately recognized all of a sudden my energy for all of that just wasn't there. Because it didn't matter anymore. Like I had my
It wasn't
close
real
group of
for
mates.
you anymore. Yeah, it didn't.
For sure.
Yeah,
And so you've got your close group of people that you speak about your tribe, and you're like, okay, now I've got to focus on quality over quantity, because if it's quantity, it's not quality with the people that
yeah,
deserve my quality. And one of the biggest challenges for me has been I feel incredibly guilty that I can't give the time to everyone that wants the time
yeah.
from me.
Right. Like I feel you. It's a powerful thing being able to say no. I feel
Mm,
the same way. Like I get that. Like I want to leave people all the time feeling better than what they are, but you only have a certain amount of energy per day. You only have it's such a conundrum.
mm,
At the end of the day, so the way it was explained to me was like you truly you have to serve yourself first, and then
mm,
what that looks like is there's levels to like the people in your relationships. There's like it's a simple reality, because if you go out there and you give someone else some energy and then you don't have enough when you get home, like is that fair to the person that you love most, or who you have an agreement where you're going to be your best version with her? You're not always going to be that for them. It's,
mm.
obviously that's what life is. But yeah, I feel you. I've had that many times, and I've burnt out many times because I've gone to that extra thing that I knew wasn't right. It didn't resonate in me, but I've got, even with my profile as well, like I feel like if I'm not there, they're not gonna have the same time. I'll be like, if we're having a party, like you need me there to get it going. So like if I'm not there, fuck, what are they gonna do? Like that's my ego. Like what are they gonna do? It's gonna be shit for everyone. Like what a joke. Of course it's not. But like that was part of me. That's part of like my makeup that feels that way. I know it's an illusion, but it's still then it's like yeah, it's interesting.
It's so interesting, man. And I guess I'd be interested to see how you feel about this. So, as an athlete in particular, and I think just generally I know there's women that definitely feel this way, but as a guy, you really pride yourself on the way that people see you from the outside, sometimes too much, often too much, as to how you're succeeding in your field of choice. Right. And so I look at a guy like Michael Jordan, you look at a guy like Kobe, you look at all these like athletes that are renowned for winning at all costs.
Mm.
and they're put on these pedestals, and rightfully so, because they've achieved incredible things in their sporting careers. And you see, like, Michael Jordan's a great example. I remember watching The Last Dance, and this guy was just so relentless. It was win at all costs, no matter whether his teammates fucking hated him, no matter whether his relationships were shithouse outside of basketball. Basketball was his life. But then I look at him now, and I can't help but feel for the guy.
Yeah,
And I
look,
know he doesn't want my sympathy. He doesn't give a fuck about Brad Driver from Wollongong. But I look at the guy and I think, mate, you've got no real relationship with your kids. Like, I think about all the fractured relationships of people who are really important to you in your life. And I wonder how you feel about the conversation of balance.
yeah. Well, I mean, I've watched that same documentary, and he's so bloody inspiring what he could do. I could never be that way.
Mm,
As much as I see like rugby as one of my purposes, like it's just a game. Like I wouldn't, I don't want to do anyone any harm. There's times where I need to poke someone in the chest and be like, bro, what the fuck are you doing out there? You've got to sort your shit out. But
mm,
it's always done through love, not just to make. Like I don't so much care if I'm not the greatest player in the world. I've never cared so much about that. I just wanted to go out there and do my art. Like, hey, my ego does love to know I'm a good player, and it has sulked at times, especially the last 2 years when it's been like my name hasn't been thrown in there, and there's other players where they're talking about. I'm like, fuck off, I'm way better than that. Like, that's my ego sulks in that way, and it's funny to watch my mind create this story of like of the poor me one narrative, pour me like, who are these guys? Fuck them. Or the other narrative of like, okay, fuck, I'm gonna go out there and show them, which is both two extremities. And then you got to match them in together and what's real and what's actually what's the reality of the situation. But yeah, in terms of that balance, yeah, again, it's such an important. Like, what angle do you want to go down?
Well, like, how do you find it for yourself to be able to, like, has it been hard to accept that maybe you won't be the best rugby player in the country, in the world, in your team, if you're choosing to invest time and energy in other things that are really important to
Yeah,
you too?
yeah, that is definitely a question I've had. Like, for me, it's just been a natural progression of picking up some other things as well. Don't get me wrong, I still have a deep belief. Like, I know if I put all my energy just onto rugby again, I could play for the Wallabies again and I could get to this
Mm.
position. But it's almost like my soul's yearning for some more stuff now as well. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be the greatest version of myself out on the field, but there is times I've had to learn to say no so I don't burn out. Like once now I'm back to playing, I'm 2 weeks off. So once I go back to playing, like I go a lot more into my not into my shell, but I'm like rugby becomes here. So
Mm.
everything that I do outside is very well measured. And like, look how hard it's been for us to get on a conversation. Like, I've got I block in, man, like 3 months at a time. I know when my breaks are coming. I know when I can have a getaway. Like, I still respond to stimulus in the morning. Hey, do you want to go get a coffee? Yep, I do. Or hey, do you want to go get lunch on Saturday? Yeah, let me feel into that. I'll let you know. But I have such a like well scheduled plan that I know where I'm going to get my breaks. I know how to look after my body. I know to get the right amount of sleep. It's still the number one thing in my life is still in that period is one, my tribe and my growth and my wife and that. And then very closely under that is rugby. And then all the rest of the stuff during season drops way down.
Mm.
So I don't really see too many of my friends or my brothers or stuff during rugby season. I see a lot of my teammates and I see obviously a lot of like my family, like who live at my home, but that's all. It's pretty much just rugby and that during season, which
Mm.
is again like comes to so it's a long way to come to that conversation. The Super Rugby is 6 months, Wallabies is 6 months, so that's where I'm playing with at the moment. It's like, do I want to put myself through that for another like all year round, or do I want to just play Super and walk away from Test footy? Because there is guys now who are as good as me in elements of the game who could take it forward. They're young, they're hungry. Do I still think I'm better than them in other areas? Yeah, I do. So that's the conflict to me is like, am I willing to give that up? And what does it look like to give that up? I give up Wallabies. I get more time to grow and do these things outside of rugby and be a more, I guess, balanced human. Or do I keep chasing that dream? And I can't tell you right yet because I haven't sat with it for long enough. I don't even know how well I'm going to be playing. Let's see. Does that sort of answer it?
Yeah, it does answer it, man. There's something I was just getting up on my phone because I want to read it to you and see how you resonate with this. But throughout the course of 2023, I was so frustrated at, like, I've been doing this for 4 years now, right? And I've been pretty blessed to get some bloody cracker guests on the pod, you being one of them. I've had, people who are just well respected in their world all around the globe. And I'm very lucky that I think a lot of the time, because of my story, people are willing to invest a bit of their time in coming on the show and connecting. And I've had some of the people in the Australian podcast space who are the best of the best that are so good at what they do that I look up to and I'm learning from, put their hand on my shoulder and say, mate, like, you've got what it takes to be at the top of the pack here, keep pushing. And when you hear those compliments, and you get it, right? Because you're once that young guy in your thing, you get that like sense of energy that like, I just have to keep going and it's going to happen for me. And even that term, it's going to happen for me. My expectation, which is, expectation is the thief of joy. My expectation was I'm going to be in a place where I can earn a full-time living from sitting behind a microphone and being in front of a camera and sharing stories with cobbers from all over Oz and the world, right? And just when it wasn't happening for me, when I was falling short of being able to put food on the table, mate, I would have been lucky to put a bottle of fucking water on the table a week from what I was earning from the pod.
Yeah.
It was so frustrating because I'm like, but all these people are telling me that I should be and that I'm good enough and that the opportunity's there. And I remember seeing this quote pop up and just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like getting smacked between the eyes. And it was, the world is divided by people who are privileged by being ordinary and those of us who are damned by our desire to be remarkable. And I remember hearing that and feeling that and just thinking, am I always going to feel like it's not enough? Am I always going to feel like I'm damned by this desire to do something that is unbelievable and remarkable? And I just felt like a little bit crushed by that because I resonated with it so highly. And then I got to the end of the last year and I decided for the first time in 4 years to take a conscious break from recording the podcast, from releasing anything, and just sit with what has been the last 4 years and figure out what I wanted from this year in my life. And then I came to this incredibly freeing conclusion. And maybe it's something I've just made up in my head to feel better about it all. I don't know. Everyone else out there can be the judge. But I just thought, what the fuck's remarkable? What, someone else telling me I'm remarkable? Like, remarkable is I get to do this thing I love every week.
Ask you why. Why do you want to be able to do this? That would be my two questions. I've got two questions for you.
Go shoot.
So, like, why do you want? So you want to be able to do this, your podcast, to go higher, so you can make money to live your best version of your life, so you can share your experiences and other people's stories to help people. That's what I'm sort of picking up. Is your
man? The funny thing is, I don't want to I never started this to make money from it. I started this because...
like millions. Like, you want to be self-sustainable in this business, doing what you love, because this is what you love, is communicating and sharing knowledge.
Yeah, 100%. I love storytelling and I love the idea of being able to connect with people and uplift people and inspire people to come out of the fucking tough shit that they're facing and get the best out of their life. And I just love the power of story and its ability to do that. And so as I sat and resonated on that, I'm like, I never had a contract with myself to make money from this in the first place.
Yeah, it's other people can get in your head. It's not even what they say; it's how you felt when they said, "Oh, you should be doing this." But again, like, that's stealing your energy. It's telling you to be somewhere. Like, the divine knows that you're exactly where you're meant to be. Like, this person, like, it's such a man. It's little conundrums. But the other thing I would say to you would, if you do, act as if you already have it. Live your life that you already have this abundance. I feel like that's where people get stuck when they're trying to manifest or they're trying to create, is they're like, this is on my parameters and soon I'm going to get here, or soon I'm going to do that. And when I have this, then I'll be able to invest in that. Or when I'm at this level and I've connected to this person and done a podcast with them, then I can reach out to the next level of people. Fucking live it as if you already are it. You already are exactly that version of yourself, that highest version. So every decision you make and every thought you have, base it on, you don't need to change anything. You just change your consciousness and you'll become it.
Right,
That's
such
why you
beautiful advice. It's such beautiful advice because there's this incredible clip that I seen just last week, and it was Chris Will and Alex Hormozy, and Chris was just sharing this thing that he read. You've already achieved the things that you told yourself would make you happy.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Sure.
and like it's so bang on. And I had this realization over the break that, mate, I'm punching so far above my weight with the most beautiful and incredible person in the world in my corner who believes in me, you know, to no end. I am the healthiest I've ever been. Like, I'm running, I'm lifting weights, I'm living life. Mate, I'm the happiest geezer you'd meet day to
Yeah,
day.
there you go. What?
Never don't have a smile on my face, you know? And I'm like, so why am I allowing this expectation of what I'm supposed to be doing to
Yeah,
to stop the joy?
yeah.
You know, and it's just such a, for me, it's been such a remarkable breakthrough in which I'm now back doing the job full time that I left to go on this journey to figure myself out. Very prodigal son of me, you know, ending up back, you know,
Yeah.
understanding that I'm
With a
enough in the
new
first place.
intention. Yeah, exactly. With a new intention for doing it.
For sure. And mate, I'm balancing it all. I'm loving life. And so I love that. I love having conversations with people like you who have been on the journey. And like, I can see that you're genuinely in a fucking great place in your life because, you know, you're smiling, we're happy, we're having a good yarn. So that's me going off the track a little bit there to talk a bit of shop. No, and I appreciate the questions. We went bloody Uno reverse on it there, didn't we? Uh, but mate, one of the things that I'm genuinely curious, you know, I love talking to guys who are in the, I guess, the veteran years of their career in any field to see, you know, there's a lot of things that go into being a rugby player. It's not just picking up the footy and, you know, throwing left and right and throwing a few goosies here and there. It's, you know, the training that goes into it, putting some weight on the back, moving around in the gym, testing yourself. Do you still very much love that physical side of preparing and, you know, getting your body ready for the game as you did when you started, if
Oh,
you ever did?
it looks so differently for me now, though. Like I know, again, like how I told you before, like my body just knows what it needs. Like it's so much more intelligent than my mind. Yeah, I'm an intellectual guy. I'm quite well read and I can retain information, but my body is a fucking supercomputer. So I listen to it. It tells me what I need to eat. It tells me when I need to eat. It tells me when I need to fast. It tells me what weights I need to lift that day. It tells me what exercise. So the part of that difficult is telling an S&C guy who's trained in this area, look, I get that, but that's not for me. My body is very unique. If I work too much that way, I lose a bit of speed. If I do too much speed, then I lose my power. If I do too much power, I lose a bit of flexibility. Like it's about keeping like it. So that's the balance that I'm finding every day. So every day I wake up, I'm tuning into my body to be like, what do I need? And I am getting older. Like I don't need anywhere near as much as I needed at 18. A lot of the stuff these guys do at training, like I can do it, but it's not good for me to do it continuously because I'm
Mm,
just eating miles off the legs. Like I already have a good base because I eat cleanly, I sleep well, and I'm quite pure with what I take in. So like I don't feel I need to train as hard as often. So for me, it's just tapping on little things. Don't get me wrong, I love a fucking big 2 hour session or a big heavy gym session every now and again or contact out there once a month with the guys. But for me, it's all training for me. And the way I train is all about efficiency on the rugby field on Saturday, nothing
mm,
else. So obviously I'm living healthy, but even what I eat, if I wasn't playing rugby, I wouldn't eat this way. I wouldn't train this way. I
mm.
train specifically to make myself the best version of myself on Saturday, which can look differently. Like that could sound strange to some people because they like to, work the base, the foundations, work hair. I'm like, no, I'm always hair. I might dip down a little bit, but I don't like. My goal is to be energetically efficient on a Saturday. My shield and my body is strong enough to be able to tackle bigger men than myself, got enough foot speed, and my mind's sharp for me to make decisions in crucial moments. That's what training is for me. And it will change when I retire.
You know, it's funny. I'm thinking, as soon as you said that, I'm thinking about the S&C guy going, mate, we've got heavy squats today. And you're like, mate, I'm feeling more bicep curls. leave me to it, mate.
Well, there is a place for bicep curls too.
Mate, there's always a place for bicep curls. you
Hey,
know.
you gotta have good grips. But yeah, it is like there'll be the schedule up there, and I'm like, I get it. For someone who doesn't know their body or like actually have a plan, like again, I told you I have like a 3 month plan of like doesn't pull me out of the moment, but I love having it on the side so I know that
Mm.
I'm always moving forward. I'm always going up. I'm always growing.
Discipline's an interesting thing, right? So discipline equals freedom, as the great Jocko Willink would say. You know, you hear all these guys talk about. I don't know if you know Jocko, Navy SEAL. I seen your little sort of questionable look then when I
Yeah,
said it.
okay,
Um,
yeah.
he's got a podcast called the Jocko Podcast. Navy SEAL guy who's just all about discipline, ownership. You'd honestly love his stuff. He does some great interviews
I've got
and
an image of someone in my head. I've seen some,
shaved head, built like a brick shit house.
yeah, okay, yeah, I think I've seen him. Grey
Yeah.
hair, like almost like a shaved, but flat shaved. No,
Yeah, maybe at a time, yeah, but he's sort of more baldish these days, or very like number one. Looks like he does it himself in the mirror. Kind of guy that looks
pretty
like he eats
husky, but
house bricks.
yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
husky
husky
voice.
voice. Yeah, yeah, I've seen him.
Yeah, he's he says discipline equals freedom, and I'm a full believer in that. And I recognize in my own life that 2020 for me was the start of like really creating some discipline again in my life. And I trained for my first marathon. And the 6 years prior to that, I trained like an absolute fucking pancake, like fluffy as, maybe a couple sets in the gym twice a week, not testing myself, never pushing
Yeah,
myself, just unbelievably in the comfort zone all the time. And in the space of 4 months to train for a marathon when your lungs are bleeding, you got to be pretty fucking disciplined or you're not going to get there.
yeah,
You know, so I was so on plan, like nothing strayed from the plan. If the plan was to run 16 Ks, I'll run 17 because I got got to be disciplined. And it was so fruitful for me. Then I got to a point where I would run myself into the ground because I wouldn't listen to my body because I had to be disciplined.
yeah,
And
right.
so
There you go. Yeah,
it's a funny thing where you've got to be balanced to go, all right, I can be disciplined and I know I'm disciplined, but my body today is telling me to chill the fuck out
yeah.
or the discipline's going to be out the window tomorrow when I'm laying up for 3 days.
If you can determine when it's your body and when it's your mind telling you, that's the key I've found. Because discipline, we create this discipline using our mind. If I do this training, I will get here. If I stick to this process, this is the normal outcome of it. But then that's what I'm saying. Like I'll wake up and I'm like, actually, that doesn't serve my body or my consciousness where I'm at to train like that today. I actually need a down day, but then I can pick it up somewhere else. But that's my body telling me that. It's not my mind being like, oh, I'm tired. Like again, the ground. If I feel it's my mind being like, a lot of them call it. Like, if my mind's being a bitch, I'm like, fuck. That's when I've got to go real into it and do a big session to take control of it again and just conquer it and remind it who's in charge. But if it's my body's telling me, like I get out of bed and I can feel like my nerves are tired, and I'm like, yeah, it's almost just communicating to me like, man, we're doing too much at the moment here. We need to
Mm.
we need to slow down. You got to stop because that's when the injuries come, or that's when burnout comes, or that's when your relationships suffer because you don't have the energy to find that balance.
Man, I call it, as anyone does, I have a couple of those days where that mind wants to be a little bit of a bitch and wants me to not do the long run or the hard session. I call it just establishing some mongrel. So every now and
Yeah,
then I've just got to do something that it absolutely rips in and the mongrel of me comes out just to remind myself
oh,
that, you
I
don't
love
listen to the
that.
mind. But you do have to listen to the body.
Yeah,
You
and
really
they
do.
like again, it's such a gentle. It takes time to know which one's what. Which is it?
Mm.
My mind controlling my body, or is it my like? Again, like that's what I recommend to people. If they sit with themselves long enough and like they get to know themselves deep enough, they'll know what's what. Like one of my friends I used to train with, he used to do a Sunday sacrifice. I couldn't do it every week. Like it broke me too much. But he would do it every Sunday. He'd either carry a big fucking log up and down the beach, or he would go into the bush and just go for a run. Like he'd carry a big stone atlas, or he would just do like some crazy shit just to break his body. And it was exactly like you're saying, like to just build that mongrel.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Mine was
Mate,
more once a month, and then it became once a 3 months, and now it's like, oh yeah, we'll do that after footy.
yeah, fair, fair. The last thing I kind of want to touch on, mate, before I let you go and get back into your day is
Yeah, I got
Like
trained 13 minutes.
13.
20.
Well, we'll keep this to 5. Post career, I know you're still very much enjoying your footy and having a good time, but post career, like, what do you see changing in your life? Do you see yourself retreating to the property, hanging out with the outpackers a little bit more, and
At,
just enjoying that peace?
at one stage I did, because again, we've got a little bit of land where we are now in Brisbane, and then we bought some land over the border in New South Wales and hinterland there. And I did see that as one, I guess, timeline for me. Another timeline would be finishing my career at the Reds and coaching. Another one would be going to Japan and experiencing the Japanese culture and playing rugby, then maybe coaching. Another one would be leaving rugby altogether. I'm studying at the moment, well, trying to study at the moment, doing an MBA at QUT. So I'm just delving into different areas at the moment that are calling to me. There's not so much a mental plan of this is exactly what I'm going to do, because in this period of my life too, it's such a beautiful space where I'm between times. So it's like my rugby career could finish in a year, could finish in 5 years. I'm not holding on to anything. I'm just seeing what's coming for me. And I do feel like I'm in the best shape I've been in. Like I've really got some things right that I had probably been off kilter for the last couple of years. And I've really just found a nice little sweet spot in my body, and then I guess in my reasons for playing the game still.
Mm.
Um, so that's been good. But yeah, I couldn't tell exactly what I'm going to do, because that's the beauty of me right now and what I'm experiencing, what I'm exploring, is I'm actually enjoying not knowing what the final outcome is going to be. I still have processes in place and putting energy here, feeling out that, dropping a few breadcrumbs here, connecting with this person, just to see what actually lights me up and is inspiring me. But the beauty of this moment as well is I can just really delve into my rugby again, especially from this week onwards, and enjoy it. And we're
Mate,
playing well, so I'm looking forward to getting out there with this team, with these new coaches, and expressing myself.
I love it, brother. I'm looking forward to watching. I'd said that was the last thing, but very last thing before I let you go. I'm certain there's a couple of fellas, gals, anyone who's watching this, listening to this, who is absolutely resonating and can see themselves in that lost period of your life in which you so beautifully described and were so open about. For all of those people who feel like they're a little bit lost at the moment, do you have just a couple words of wisdom or a little bit of advice, or even just a reference to something you've read or listened to or watched that you think would be really helpful?
Again, the more I've reflected, you're never actually lost. You're exactly where you're meant to be at every moment. It's just you just shift your consciousness, shift what are you going after? What is lighting you up? It's okay, you may feel like you're the glass half empty right now, but it doesn't take long. It could take you 10 minutes of breathing, a bit of gratitude to actually put into perspective what's happening in your world. And then the one thing I always say is get to know yourself. Just even if it's 10 minutes a day, it could be hard. When I first started, I'd do some breathing, 5 minutes of breathing, and lay down for 10 minutes. I'd even set my alarm to be because at that stage I'd get depleted and fall asleep by the end of it. Or I was like, fuck, I don't want to waste half an hour of my afternoon. So I'll just commit 15 minutes. And that's how it started. And then when I sat with myself a little bit more, and you start to become friends with your mind, you start to become you see the world in a little bit of a different way. And one thing I would suggest is explore some of these modalities, while you're still learning and learning out how to ask yourself these deep questions of who am I and where is life going and what is my purpose, what am I here for, is what is this place we're living in, things like human design. I think that's a great place to start.
I appreciate your time so much. I've loved hearing more in depth your story, hearing about your experience thus far, and mate, I love the way you finished that off there. Thanks for coming on.
It's been a pleasure. Cheers, Bradley.
Oh, mate, big year, big
Yeah,
year.
you too, man. Live it, feel it. You already are it.
I love it, brother. Appreciate it.
Sweet, bro.